good morning, and welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is about Nigerians. And this has to do with an encounter that I had with some fellow Africans from Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Africa with regards to the mistreatment of other fellow Africans living in South Africa. But in the course of our conversation, talking about Africans living in South Africa, it shifted from Africans to the Nigerians living in South Africa. And this makes me beg the question, why do other Africans have a misconception about Nigerians and hate as well as despise Nigerians? But this issue of Nigerians being despised by other Africans and people around the world goes back at least, I think, about 50 years. And I came across an old YouTube audio where people talking about why they hate Nigerians. So fellas, let's go ahead and hear this audio, and I'll come back and dissect this whole issue of why other Africans and people hate Nigerians. Let's go ahead, fellas.
Nigeria is a strange spot. Nigeria? Why I hate Nigeria. Do you have any country you don't like?
Nigeria. Do you have any country?
One thing which is negative about Nigerians, like you can never trust them 100%.
The truth I will tell you is that Nigeria is really a bad country.
If you live in Nigeria, if you are living for a Nigerian person, if you don't think that they might be faster than you in anything at all you do. So that one alone, I don't like about them.
In Ghana here, we think we are not safe with them.
Nigerians.
All right, fellas. You heard it yourselves from these fellas in their various African countries talking about why they hate Nigerians. I mean, this thing cracks me up. Fellas. I mean, the dude talking about anything that you do, they will outsmart you. That's funny, fellas. I mean, hold on. Nigerians are the most populous Africans and as well as black people in the world. So basically, you have like 1 out of every 5 black African is a Nigerian. So Nigerians tend to be seen, heard of, known all around the world. Because you go to every country or every continent, you'll find a Nigerian down there. And out of that, people tend to meet Nigerians more than other Africans. But the issue goes back to the issue of the way Nigerians present themselves in these countries and so on and so forth. Nigerians in America, for instance, are the most educated ethnicity in America, period. I mean, you can go and Google it yourselves. You can go to the Commerce Department and it's right there. Nigerians are more educated in America than any ethnic group in America, including whites, Asians, Arabs, any ethnic group, period. So you go to American universities, you go to American industries, corporate America, and so on and so forth. 9 out of 10, you're going to meet a Nigerian sitting at the top or somewhere there. And Nigerians are very proud people, fellas. They are the kind of people who love their culture. And out of their pride of their country and their culture, they tend to show it. See, they don't hide from who they are. So they tend to rub people off the wrong way with that attitude. So you hear from a lot of people talking about how Nigerians tend to be arrogant, aggressive, and so on and so forth. But that is part of being a Nigerian. And this also goes back to the issue of colonization when we talk about Africans. You see, Nigerians are the only African country that you will find that the wealth of that country is controlled and owned by their citizens, Nigerians. Whereas when you go to other African countries, most of the world and businesses are controlled by either Arabs, Asians, or Europeans. And you see the attitude of Nigerians in Nigeria, or even when they migrate to other African countries, they show that same strive, that same aggressiveness in business, in education, and in any other sector in any part of the world. So you tend to find that Nigerians are always talked about when you talk about black people. I mean, in America here, I mean, when you talk about black people in America, number one group that you always hear of are Nigerians. And they are all over the place. They are not just in academia. They are in sports. They are in music. I mean, their music now controls pretty much almost all the airwaves in America today. So Nigerians are always heard of. But the saddest of it all is that most of these people who are talking about how much they hate Nigerians and they don't like Nigerians and blah, 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 some of them have even met a Nigerian. And most of them have even gone to Nigeria. But they formed this opinion about Nigerians based on the bad rap that Nigerians have gotten from this 419 internet fraudsters deals and all that stuff. So they tend to have this 419 internet fraudsters on their mind, and they relate that to all of Nigerians and tend to think that Nigerians are criminals, Nigerians are this and that, and so on and so forth. But fellas, those Nigerians who do 419 and this internet fraudsters are just a minority. A minority. They're just a fraction. I mean, Nigeria is what? It's about 220, 230 million people. That's the population of Nigeria. And that's what we are talking about. 230, 230 million people. The second closest country to Nigeria is what? I think it's Ethiopia. Ethiopia is about 100 million or 110 million. And then you talk about Egypt. So if you're looking at it, Nigeria is as big in terms of population-wise, like twice, more than twice of Ethiopia's population or Egypt's population. And these are the closest in terms of population to Nigeria. So Nigerians tend to be seen all over the world. I mean, and Nigerians are very successful all over the world. I mean, like I just talked about the education in America. Even if you go to Europe, the most educated Africans that you find in Europe are all Nigerians. So Nigerians are all over the place. And they rub it off. And people perceive that wrongly because a lot of people tend to see Nigerians as some sort of arrogant Africans. And to me, which is a good thing. Because see, going back to colonization, a lot of Africans have been made to feel inferior of themselves. And out of that, when they leave Africa and move to Europe or America or Asia, they still have this inferiority complex mindset in them. Whilst Nigerians don't have that. I mean, I've met a lot of Nigerians, okay? I mean, I've met a lot of Nigerians. Myself, I mean, I have a Nigerian blood in me, half Nigerian. So I know what I'm talking about. I've met a lot of Nigerians, fellows. And I've never seen a Nigerian who will kowtow to a black American or white man in America. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe you have seen it, but I haven't seen it yet. I mean, these Nigerians are totally different. So when they encounter these other Asians and Americans and whites in America, they tend to come across as arrogant to these people. Because when these people meet other Africans, they tend to see them differently. Because most other Africans tend to be more like humble, submissive to these people. While Nigerians don't do that. So when you talk about Nigerians to these people, the first thing that will come out of their mouth is that, oh, those guys are aggressive. Those guys are this. Those guys are that. But that is how Nigerians are. Nigerians carry themselves with pride. And one thing about Nigerians, they are so proud of themselves that they don't care. I mean, they don't give that F of what you think about them. They don't give a damn what you think. A Nigerian man will walk in with his agbada on. We'll go and get his Nigerian food and we sit right in front of him eating his food. He doesn't give a damn. Whilst other Africans will feel some way in doing the same thing that Nigerian man will do. And Nigerians tend to stand up for a lot of Africans too in this country. So the Nigerians are perceived to be people who are too aggressive or in some ways arrogant because of the way they approach way they approach things in America or in Europe or in Asia. And out of that, they equate also that to that internet fraud testing that has been going on and so on. But with regards to this internet fraud testing, look, this thing has given Nigeria a very bad rap. But unfortunately, most of these people talking about they hate Nigerians and Nigerians are this, they are criminals and that, don't know anything. It's out of ignorance that people form these opinions. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality and the world we live in. The information people consume, a lot of times don't do their own research. So they consume the information that is being presented to them and they form their opinions based on that information. And unfortunately, this internet fraudsters information that have been fed to the world have portrayed Nigerians as the number one internet fraudsters in the world, which is not true. I mean, talk about number one internet fraudsters, you find them in Russia, Ukraine, Pakistan, India, China. You know what I'm saying? And even some of them have set up bases in America. You can receive a call in Florida, and that person is calling from Florida but with an accent, but you would think that he's a Nigerian, but he's an American. So these opinions that have been formed on Nigerians because of the news reports that they have received or heard about Nigerians dealing in internet and all that stuff are all false. Nigerians, when you talk about internet fraudsters, fall in about 10 or 9 or 11 in the world. Whilst most people don't know this. You know what I'm saying? And you hear about this, marriage scam and all that stuff and so on and so forth. But fellas, let's be real with these issues. There are a lot of criminals living in America that are living in Nigeria. But a lot of people don't know. There are a lot of white European criminals living in Europe, Italy, and living in America than in Nigeria, which most people don't know. And they look at these people as if like they are saints in here. But go do your own research and you find out most of these marriage scams and internet scams are committed by Europeans and Asians and not Africans, let alone Nigerians. But the perception that we have is that, it's the Nigerians. It's the Nigerians. So out of that, some of us in Africa also have this ignorance in us about Nigerians, and we buy and we feed into this nonsense. But fellas, look, even within your own African countries, if you look at per capita and you look at the crime that are being committed in your own African countries, your citizens commit more crimes than Nigerians in your own African countries. I mean, these South Africans talking about they don't like Nigerians and all that and so on and so forth. South Africans are the most crime-ridden people in Africa than any other African country. South Africa is the most crime-ridden place in Africa. There are more crimes, heinous crimes in South Africa than all of Africa. As a matter of fact, you can even combine most African countries and their crime rate will not even be half or a quarter of South Africa's crime rate. So, fellas, this is a misconception that some Africans, unfortunately, have on Nigerians, and so on and so forth. But look, Nigerians are the most educated people in America, as well as in Europe, among all ethnic groups. I mean, all ethnic groups. I mean, I have audios of people, conservative, a TV forecasters here, Bill O'Reilly, even talking about how much Nigerians control Harvard Business School. I mean, talk about Nigerians are the number one doctors in America among blacks. 75% of black doctors in America are Nigerians. I mean, look at the sports world. The Nigerians are dominant. I mean, look at NFL, National Football League in America. You look at basketball. And then you look at academics. You go to all these top schools in America, all dominant. Nigerians are dominant. I mean, that tells you this is something that we as black people have to be proud of. I mean, a lot of you people don't know. You sit down in your African countries and think that, when you come here, we Africans, we are inferior, we are that, and, the Indians and the Chinese are smart fellows. Come here. Come to America and go to the schools. And you find out Your fellow Africans, the black Africans that you think of yourselves as inferior, they are the ones on top in America. And I'm talking about America. Okay? So let's get this nonsense out of our heads about Nigerians and so on and so forth. Because it's a misconception. And a lot has to do with, because one, like I said, going back to colonization, most African countries, due to colonization, were made to be more of a submissive breed in Africa. So they tend to have this submissive mindset, inferiority mindset towards other nationals like Europeans and so on and so forth. Whereas Nigerians don't have that. And because the Nigerians don't have that, when they leave Nigeria and they come to Europe or Asia or America, and they encounter these other Europeans and Asians and so on and so forth, these people perceive them to be arrogant, considering the other Africans that they have encountered. You see, that's what this whole thing is about. So a lot of the times it has to do with, if you have encountered other Africans, let's say Ghanaians, Kenyans, South Africans, Ethiopians, and then they have different attitude, you know, in terms of the way they approach things. And then you encounter a Nigerian, you're going to find a whole lot different. Because the Nigerians are not going to take your bull crap. That's number one. Nigerians are going to stand up for what they believe in, and they're going to fight for what they believe in. So out of that, they are perceived differently among the Africans. And also, being the most popular African country, as well as having most Nigerians almost all over the world, it is easy to encounter a Nigerian in Europe, America, or Asia than you encounter, let's say, a Ghanaian or other Africans. I mean, that's a fact. Because you talk about, you go out all over the world, there's a Nigerian, I bet you there's a Nigerian in every country on this planet. There's a Nigerian there. I mean, and this issue of the misconception of about Nigerians goes hand in hand with the misconception of African Americans in America. Because if you come to America right now, fellows, and you turn on the TV, the first thing you see on TV, 9 out of 10, is going to be a black man, black American, in handcuffs by the cop in a major city like New York, Washington, D.C., Miami, LA, and so on and so forth. And that forms people's opinion about blacks. And that opinion that most foreigners tend to have on blacks in America is that they are lazy, they are criminals, they commit crimes in America and all that and so on and so forth. But in essence, blacks, even per capita in America, don't commit more crimes than white people in America. White people in America consume more drugs than any race in America. But you don't know that. You see, because the media, the perception that is being put forward by the media in the news outlets, you tend to see blacks always in handcuffs, always being chased by the police, and so on and so forth. Because they tend to live in big cities. But then, if you look at the consumption of opioids, drugs, in America, the number one people who consume drugs are white Americans. You go to states like Ohio, Kentucky, Kansas, and so on and so forth. You know, but that's not what a lot of people know of in terms of black Americans. They always have this perception about black Americans in America that, oh, they are lazy, they don't want to work, which is not true. Black Americans are one of the most hardworking people in America, but people don't know that because of the perception. Yes, there are ones who don't want to work. That is true. But if you look across the board, especially the older ones, they work just as hard as any other American. But the perception that the news media puts out creates this impression that, oh, black Americans are lazy, black Americans are this, black Americans are that, and so on and so forth. So this same misconception is what the news media around the world, with regards to internet fraud and all that stuff, have made it seem like the Nigerians are the number one people who commit all these internet fraudsters and so on and so forth. When in essence, Nigerians are not. Because if you look at the data that they have, most of these internet fraudsters are committed by Russians, Ukrainians, Pakistanis, Indians, Chinese, you know, but a lot of you people don't know that. You know, and even talking about these Africans talking about why they hate Nigeria and all this and that and that. Like I said earlier, Even within your own African countries, if you look at your own data in your own African countries, yes, you might find 1 or 2 Nigerians there who are doing this and that and that. But majority of the Nigerians have contributed enormously to your economy in Africa. I mean, you can count a lot of African countries and you look at the businesses, the money that Nigerians have invested in a lot of these African countries have contributed to the economic growth in most of these African countries. South Africa even included. South Africa included. Nigerians have pumped a lot of their money in that economy. Because, you see, Nigerians are very hardworking people. I mean, if you want to talk about Nigerians, let's look at the facts of Nigerians in terms of reality. Not based on some misconception and some news media, giving out some fake news about blacks and Nigerians and so on and so forth. You go to most African countries and you look at the investment climate. And look at, I would say, let's take for instance West Africa. And look at the banks and all the money that is invested in most of these countries. Outside of some 1 or 2 European companies, most of these banks and businesses that are operating in most African countries today, West Africa and Central Africa, as well as East Africa, are all owned by Nigerians. And these are hard-working Nigerians. Very hard-working Nigerians. Because that's who Nigerians are. Nigerians are go-getters, fellows. They come and settle in your country. They're not going to sit down there for you to hand them stuff. They're going to go for it. And out of that also rubs people the wrong way. Because they're looking at these people as foreigners coming into our countries. And then now these people are sitting on top in our own country. So some of it has to do with enviness. And some of it also rub them the wrong way. And not all of that. Nigerians also go there and tend to go what? Marry some of these local women of these various African countries. And also tend to rob the men because of the way the Nigerians treat their women. Some cases far better than the way they treat their own women. So these rob some of these Africans also real bad. And out of that, some people will always hate Nigerians for that. But at the end of the day, my fellow brothers and sisters, let's be real here. Nigeria is the biggest African country, the most populous African country. And most of the wealth in Africa is controlled by Nigerians. And we have to be proud of that. At the end of the day, we have to be proud that most of the wealth in Africa are controlled by black Nigerians, Africans. I mean, we're not talking about Arabs or Lebanese and Europeans and so on and so forth. And we have to be proud of that. And let's pray that one day you will have all that in all of African countries. So, fellows, nice to talk to you guys today. If it's Sunday, it's the Africa Weekly Talk.